Yashodananda Rajajanaranja Yashodananda Rajajanaranja Rajajanaranja Yamunatira Anachari Yamunatira Anachari Jaya Radhama Madhava Kunda Bihari Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodananda Rajajanaranja Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Jaya Govinda Girivardhari Girivardhari Yashodananda Rajajanaranja Rajajanaranja Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Pariraj Ki Jai Astota Stota Shrimad Devan Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Pariraj Ki Jai Astota Stota Shrimad Devan Grace Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Goti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, chapter 33, chapter entitled A Lot of Ground to be Covered. Indore, I think that's how you say it, December 3rd, 1970. India continued to be like a dream for Prabhupada's disciples, who gazed out the windows as the train moved them through India's unfamiliar rural world. The trackside bushes blossomed in yellow. Mile after mile of irrigated agricultural fields passed by. Wheat, rice, sugarcane, and varieties of dal. Small villages, mud-walled houses with straw roofs, or thatched walls with tile roofs, drifted peacefully by. An occasional village temple made of stone would rise above the surrounding simple structures. Cowherd boys with sticks tended their herds on the grassy banks of meandering streams. And the grazing cows, the oxen plowing in the ancient fields, the dung paddies drying in the sun for fuel, the smoke rising from the cooking fires and the smell of the warm earth, all were part of a peaceful, simple way of life the devotees were coming to appreciate through Prabhupada's association. Prabhupada and his disciples were en route to Indore, a city of 475,000 in the central Indian province of Madhya Pradesh, 13 hours northeast of Bombay. The directors of the Gita Jayanti Mahotsava, a festival to celebrate the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, had invited Prabhupada and his disciples to attend their convention and public meeting. In Indore, Srila Prabhupada and his disciples settled into their quarters near the Gita Bhavan, the site of the Gita Jayanti Mahotsava. The directors of the convention had assigned Prabhupada a bungalow with a lawn and garden and had provided nearby facilities for his disciples. The devotees toured the grounds of the Gita Bhavan, noting the many swamis and sadhus who had arrived from various parts of India for the Mahotsava. They saw the large pandala and stage, the eye hospital run by the Gita Bhavan, and the diorama exhibit. The diorama exhibit they regarded as the kind of eclectic mixing of spiritual paths that Prabhupada often referred to as hodgepodge. Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, and demigods and animals were all on display. While admiring the energy and imagination that had produced such an exhibit, the devotees questioned the benefit of such a conglomeration. On the first night of the festival, Prabhupada was scheduled as the last speaker. His disciples who sat with him on stage grew bored and restless from the ordeal of so many hours of Hindi speeches. And knowing that these speakers were presenting Mayavad misconceptions made the evening especially painful. Srila Prabhupada sat sternly and waited, his hand in his bead bag, his head held high, his lips murmuring the Hare Krishna mantra. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sarvasashtabdipiyusa, Sarvavedaka Satpala, Sarvasiddhanta Ratnadya, Sarvalokalkatarit Prada, nectar of the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich man of precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvanta Didantitya, Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali, you are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Vakshashurayate, Sarvada Sarvasiddhaya, Shri Krishna Namaste. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You're Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Mat Sangin, Mad Guru and Mahadana, Mad Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya, Ananda Namaste. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu ta dayin, atino chittatakara, hanamunchakadachin man prema hitkantara vaspara. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalted the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart by my voice of pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from 5th Canto, Chapter 12, entitled Rahugana Converses with Jed Bharat. Text number 1. Rahugana Uvacha Namo Nama Karana Vigrahaya Sarupatu Chikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dujabandhulinga Nigutta Nityanubhavaya Tupyam Namo Nama Karana Vigrahaya Swarupatu Chikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dujabandhulinga Nigutta Nityanubhavaya Tupyam Namo Nama Karana Vigrahaya Swarupatu Chikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dujabandhulinga Nigutta Nityanubhavaya Tupyam. Rahugana Uvacha, King Rahugana said, Nama, my respectful obeisances, Namaha, obeisances, Karana Vigrahaya, to one whose body emanates from the Supreme Person, the cause of all causes, Swarupatu Chikrita Vigrahaya, who has completely removed all the contradictions of the scriptures by manifesting his true self. Namaha, respectful obeisances, Avaduta, O Master of all mystic power, Dujabandhu Linga, by the characteristics of a person born in a Brahmana family, but not executing the duties of a Brahmana. Nigutta, covered, Nitya Anubhavaya, to him whose eternal self-realization, Tubhyam, to you. Translation. King Rahugana said, O most exalted personality, you are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradictions in the Shastra have been removed. In the dress of a friend of a Brahmana, you are hiding your transcendental blissful position. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. Sarva Karana Karanam. Rishabdeva was the direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. His son Bharata Maharaj, who was now acting as the Brahmana Jad Bharat, had received his body from the cause of all causes. Therefore, he is addressed as Karana Vigrahaya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hum Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Translation again. King Rahugana said, O most exalted personality, you are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradiction in the Shastra has been removed. In the dress of a friend of a Brahmana, you are hiding your transcendental blissful position. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Prabhupada here focuses on this word, Karana Vigrahaya. To one whose body emanates from the Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. So, the explanation is that Bharata Maharaj, he got his body directly from the Lord. Rishabdev is an incarnation. But in another sense, he is also a representative of the Lord. So therefore, in the translation itself, you are non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sakshad Daritwena Samasta Shastra is the prayer we sing every morning. So Prabhupada also quotes Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes is the Supreme. So in one sense, we all get our body from the Supreme Lord. He is the cause of everything. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva yonishu kunteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. All living entities are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. So we are getting our body also from the Lord, but indirectly through material nature is giving us the facility to live. But Rishabdeva is getting it directly. So there are many sons of the Lord who are direct. In Dwarka, we hear of Krishna's sons. Pradyumna is famous to be, he's probably one of the most famous sons of Krishna, from the womb of Rukmini. He's known as Cupid personified, or Cupid is an emanation from Pradyumna. Then there are sons of Jambavati, or Satyabhama, who are Shatajit, Purujit. Jambavati has Samba. Samba is known to be mischievous. We know in the 11th canto, the pastime where the sages were performing some rituals. It was actually in the house of Vasudev, an elaborate ceremony, a yagya, after which they went to a town nearby. And then the young boys of the Yadu dynasty, they came there creating mischief. They dressed Samba as a lady in a sari. Then they approached the sages. Narada was there, Vishwamitra was there, Vashishta, Bhrigu, all the great sages of the universe were assembled. So the young boys thought to have a little bit of fun. They dressed Samba in a dress of a pregnant lady, and they took him to the sages. My dear sages, this young black-eyed lady, she wants to have a son. Can you please tell us? Is she gonna have a boy or a girl? And so, ridiculing the sages like this, the sages decided to curse them. And they said, you think you're funny? She'll give birth to an iron club which will destroy your dynasty. Sure enough, they took off the sari and an iron club was there. They took it to King Ugrasena. Ugrasena ground up the whole iron club into powder, threw it in the ocean. The waves, he thought this will deal with the problem, but by the will of the Lord, the waves took all the dust particles of the ground up club to the shore. They grew into bamboo rods. One iron lump was still remaining. A fish swallowed it up. Then a fisherman, took up the fish, took out the iron club. The iron lump created an arrow by it, by which finally that was the arrow that was used to shoot Krishna in the foot, by which he apparently died. So all of it began from the mischief of the young boys of the Yadus, who Samba was the chief culprit, you can say. So Krishna has many sons like this, direct sons. Of course, we are all sons of God. But these sons, they're very intimately connected to him. They sit on Krishna's lap. Krishna smells their hair. There's different descriptions given there in the Nectar of Devotion, how intimately connected to him they are. So these sons, they live in harmony with Krishna, and that's another definition that Prabhupada gives of how one can be a son of God. A son is one who knows the desire of his father and works according to that. And that son becomes very dear. So there is a Vedic aphorism which states, Atmavai putra namasi, that the man takes birth as his son. They are non-different. So even from a material conception, the father and the son are the same. And Prabhupada gives this argument to describe how Jesus, like, in Christianity, there's a lot of disagreement. Is Jesus God or is he God's son? And they fight with one another. But Prabhupada clarifying, you can say by the same principle of Achinta Beda Beda Tattva, simultaneously one and different. He uses this Vedic aphorism, Atma Vai Putra Nama Si, to describe how the son and the father, they are the same. And so Jesus can be accepted as God and he can be accepted as God's son simultaneously. So again, it's the philosophy we have as well, that the spiritual master is non-different from the Supreme Lord and he should be honored just as good as God. So then Prabhupada also describes that, actually, first of all, this principle is also shown in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Mahaprabhu, he didn't want to see King Prataparudra. All the devotees were trying to get the king to have a darshan of the Lord. He was very eager. So Mahaprabhu kept on rejecting it. How could a sannyasi meet with a king? It's as good as death. What would people think if they see me associating with him? Finally, after being repeatedly petitioned to do so, Mahaprabhu said, okay, fine, you just bring his son to me. And that'll be as good as me meeting the king. Then we know when the son came, he looked like Krishna. Mahaprabhu was very happy to see him. He embraced him, and Prataparudra was also pacified. So there's different places where this principle is shown, that the son is non-different from the father. And then again, Prabhupada describing how Jesus Christ, because the Christians, their famous mantra or aphorism or injunction is that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father except through him. And God only has one son. So therefore, Prabhupada, he uses the simple logic that even I can have more than one son. So why should God be limited to just one son? It means I have more potency than he does. So then he goes on to explain that the Supreme Lord, he comes to this world in different ways. One is he comes directly as an incarnation. Another is that he comes as his son, or he sends his bona fide representative. And so both the representative and the son, they are equal. And therefore, God is unlimited. He sends unlimited representatives through different traditions and continuously gives the opportunity for people to hear about him. So for us, you can say, Srila Prabhupada is our Jesus. There was a professor. He was like a researcher, a theologian. He met Prabhupada a few times. He was very favorable to the devotees, although he wasn't a practicing devotee himself. And so I think I heard this from Ramai Maharaj last year during the Disappearance Festival of Srila Prabhupada. So this professor, he said, I study all different religions. And when I do so, especially modern religions or new religious movements, I do a comparative study with ancient religions and movements of the world. So he said, when I do a study of Srila Prabhupada and his movement, the only two people that can compare is Jesus and Muhammad. But he said, but Jesus and Muhammad, they only preached to people of their locality. They never went outside of their jurisdiction. But Srila Prabhupada, he traveled all over the world. So objectively analyzing it, I conclude that Srila Prabhupada was much greater than Jesus and Muhammad. And again, you see Islam and Mohammedism, Mohammedans, which is Abrahamic traditions, and Judaism and others, they took like 2,000 years to get to where they are today, to reach such global influence. And they're still growing now, but it took a very, very long time. But Srila Prabhupada, within 50 years, he's done a revolution, you can say. And actually, it's within 12 years because he was only traveling for only 12 years. And after that, within the 50 years after his departure, I think it's actually similar with Muhammad and Jesus. They only preached for a certain amount of time, but after their departure is when the religion through their disciples increased. So historians are noting the significance of this Son of God, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada also said that in the future, they will note even more. That historians will note how this movement has saved the world from its most dire hour in due course of time. So the Supreme Lord is unlimited. He can send unlimited sons through time, place, circumstance. He's not just for a certain group of people in a certain time. So this argument that the Christians put forward, that he's the only way, the truth, and the life, no one can come to the Father except through him, is limiting. It is a glorification of the spiritual master. We can also say the same way in our tradition. No one can get to the Supreme Lord except through his representative. That's a more clear way to describe that principle. So the Son's purpose should be one with the Father's. And here we are hearing that Rahugana, he's accepting that Jad Bharat, by his ability to give transcendental knowledge, he's not different from the Lord. Because what's happening here is in the last chapter, Jad Bharata instructs King Rahugana. So he begins to speak all these points that seem to be ambiguous to the king. Some of them seem contradictory. So therefore he says all kinds of contradictions in Shastra have been removed by your influence. So in this chapter, Rahugana begins to ask for clarification. The principle is that the son is explaining about God, and then the disciple is able to ask for clarification. Pariprashnena sevaya. Which one is inquiring? Pariprashnena, to inquire when the spiritual master gets some clarification. So, a dear son of God, when he tries to bring more sons of God back to his shelter, becomes even more dear. Nachatasman manusheshu kashit mekpirkutama. How's the second verse? The second line of that verse go? Nachatasman manusheshu kashit mekpirkutama. There's no one more dear, and then there's no one more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So an example can be given, I think Prabhupada gives an example as well, that a man may have a whole lot of wealth, and his sons, they neglect the shelter of the father. They go live a life full of addiction and poverty. But the father, he's always willing to accept them back. And so if one of his sons goes out and tries to get these lost sons of his, the father is even more pleased. Actually, even now, whenever I call my dad across the world, he's always telling me, "Oh, what are you doing over there? There's nothing in that country for you. You just come here. If you just come back, I'll take care of everything. You don't have to worry." So I've been away from him for like 12 years. But still, the doors are open. He's willing to accept me whenever I come back. So similarly with the Supreme Father, it's like that. all his sons are rotting in this material world, just like my father thinks I'm rotting here in the ashram. And he's just waiting. If you ever do decide to come back, please, I will welcome you with open arms. So in this way, one can become very dear to Krishna by preaching his message to the world. Another point that makes a son very dear is when all, or makes the children very dear to the father, is when they all cooperate together. And so this is explained in the fourth canto when we hear of the Prachetas, when the Lord describes to them that he's very pleased by their cooperation together. In one sense, actually, to preach is difficult, but it's not that difficult. It can actually be done even by material fervor, because we can use our psychophysical nature. There's some kind of reward that we get, some kind of feeling of accomplishment, and so that's important. It's not to be minimized, but it can be done alone, and the false ego may not be hindered so much. Of course, it is hindered when you get a lot of rejection from people. You have to take the humble position. So it's very purifying, but cooperation and living in harmony with all the other sons, with all the other devotees, that takes even more strength because the false ego also becomes challenged there. And so when the sons live in harmony with one another, then they become even more dear. One of my father's brothers, my father is my biological father, he's one of 11 kids. And he had one brother, about the middle child, who was very devious. And he would always cause trouble amongst his other siblings. My father also, because he was a little bit well off, he would give them money. And then this one brother, he would go to his sisters and try to get the money that my father had given them. And he would sometimes occupy their houses, and he also had 3 wives. so so he was known. They're living in Africa, so he was known to be the black sheep. And my father would always tell me about him, and he would tell me, if you and your siblings, I'm one of 6, he would say, do not be like him. He would always say that I want you guys to all get along, especially when I depart. I don't want you guys to quarrel with one another. So sometimes it's easy to get along with the kids when the father is there watching over you. But then when the father departs, that's when all hell breaks loose. People also begin to quarrel over the money, what he's left, over the will, which will happen when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati disappeared. Srila Prabhupada, knowing the history, he took many precautions not to have the history repeated. And then he threw his last, you can say, card on the table. He said, your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate together. Now one may say, how is it that cooperation is love? In one sense, it's not. In one sense, it's just kind of like Prabhupada saying, if you don't do this, nothing else matters. It's kind of like a wife. She tells you, take out the trash, and you don't do it. And then finally she says, if you love me, take out the trash. So it's like, it's not a big activity, taking out the trash. But she's saying, if you don't do this, then I'm not going to be satisfied with you. So Srila Prabhupada, knowing the difficulty that will arise, he made this point that if you guys don't do this, then nothing else you do matters to me. In another sense, it is love, because by that activity, one is able to fulfill the desire of the beloved. Without cooperation, actually nothing works. There's many examples of how cooperation has allowed the ISKCON movement to propel forward, one of which is in the 70s when book distribution was expanding everywhere. The big boom of book distribution, all the devotees were working together cohesively. They were printing books together, they were teaching one another, sending people here and there, everywhere. Everything was working well together because of the cooperation that was taking place. And when there's disunity, everything falls apart, just like the Gaudiya Math was doing so well. It was so influential. But because of that disunity, something so great was demolished within the matter of minutes. So to be dear to the Father and to be empowered also by the Father, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says it requires two things. It requires knowledge of the desire of the Father, and it requires sacrifice to fulfill that desire. Two things are necessary. So I actually just looked at this verse late last night and in the morning because I was a little busy, so I didn't have so much to prepare for it. But these are some thoughts that I have regarding the matter, and I hope there was some value there to the devotees. If anybody has anything to ask or add, please do so.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hari Hari.
Thank you very much for stating the importance of the text and how Raghuna really understood the importance of Jadabharat. He is none other the son of Rishabdev, who is God himself. So he is carried out all the perspective, or you can say instruction, he received from his father, and he tried to maintain that in a proper systematic way so that the mission of his father can be broadcasted in near future. See, as you example that how the Son of God, what is the duty of the Son of God, and what exactly the Father wants to be carried out after his departure. So much so important, as Srila Prabhupada is always give reference that your respect to me is only your unity. Your respect for me will show how unitedly you carry out my instruction after my departure. And that is what I want. So with this instruction, we can see from the examples of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. After his departure, everything gets disturbed. People started quarreling each other about the regarding the property and all sorts of activities. So we can see the chaos starts if they don't follow their father properly, their instruction. If the motive is not the right way, the things happens in opposite direction. So it's very, very important to glorify one's father is to follow his instruction, carry out his instruction as it is mentioned by his father. So to remain united, to carry out his instruction, those are the very, very important instruction. Here, Bharat
Thank you.
Maharaj carried out, and Rahuguna understood that importance. How great Bharat Maharaj, because he mistreated Bharat Maharaj. Now he could understand the importance of Jara Bharat. It's not a Jara Bharat, it is a Brahman Bharat, who is none other than the Karana Vigraha, the source of incarnation from Lord Rishabdev. So he is as powerful as Rishabdev. And to respect that high, highly elevated Brahman is the duty of a real Kshatriya as Rahuguna. So that is the understanding of Rahuguna from this text. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the We had something here, some question from a devotee.
I was just going to say, I've heard it mentioned a few times about that statement of Prabhupada, that you never be shown for me by how you cooperate once a day, and understanding the backstory to it. And I've heard it from a few different devotees that, in essence, it has said the same thing. One devotee either said to Prabhupada personally or wrote him a letter. Just like, I can't remember the son's name, Yayati's son, Guru.
Oh, yeah.
Who sacrificed his youth for so Yati could become young. And so he wrote or spoke to Prabhupada, just as, I will sacrifice my, my youth for you so you can be the acharya and do everything and things will go on. So he said that, love. And then Prabhupada, seeing the mentality, like, I'm willing to sacrifice, made the point that sacrificing the body, that's glorious, but more important is this, which is sacrificing the false ego. which is the biggest sacrifice.
Thank you. I don't know if the devotees heard that, but Gadai Garanga is explaining that in the Bhagavatam there's the story of Maharaj Jayati and his son who was willing to sacrifice his youth for his father's old age at the request of his father. And sure, so one disciple approached Prabhupada and he told him like this, I'm willing to sacrifice my body for you, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada replied that that's great, but more important is that you cooperate together. That's a better sacrifice that you can make. Thank you. Anything else from the devotees here? Okay, we thank you all for the opportunity to speak on the Bhagavatam. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय हिज ग्रेस वृंदावन मधुर्य प्रभु की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि बोल All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.